Hey Mama, I'm super excited to share this recipe with you. Like we talked about, this is a really great one because you can cook the quinoa and get basically 2 recipes out of 1. So it's going to be super helpful and handy. You can also, the quantities, there's a decent amount where if you needed to feed a handful of people, you could, but also for you, you'd be able to really easily store it into a 2-cup container and portion it out and freeze it for later meals and everything. So that'll be super helpful to have. We're going to start off by, I'm just going to list everything that you need in case you missed the list that I sent over to you. That way you can pause this if you need to and rewrite the list for anything. So bear with me while I give you all the ingredients one last time. We're doing 2 recipes. Like we talked about, the app that I use on my phone, and I use it on my tablet and my phone so they can kind of go back and forth, is called Paprika. Paprika is really nice where it shows your recipes. You can put your ingredients, the directions, everything all in the app, and then that way you don't have to find another paper. It's always right there with your phone. If you're at the grocery store, I want to try this recipe, you can add it to your grocery list and you can find the ingredients instead of having to remember them. So it's kind of nice to have with you at all times. So that's an advantage for me. If you like the paper format, great, no problem. You can have that as an option as well. The 2 recipes we're going to do is it's called quinoa taco meat. There's no meat in it, it's just quinoa. I did get this recipe from the minimalistbaker.com, so you can find it there if you also want to. And the other recipe that we're going to do is called Zesty quinoa salad, and that I found on allrecipes.com. Both of those I have in my Paprika app, listing all the ingredients and the directions like I just said. And so I'll be using that on my tablet over here. The ingredients for the Zesty quinoa salad is basically your quinoa. You can use some water, or in our situation we use water with a little bit of broth. Olive oil, limes, where you're going to juice them, or else I just use lime juice. We're going to use ground cumin, salt, cherry tomatoes, or if you can't find cherry tomatoes, I use grape tomatoes a lot. Just cut them to the appropriate size for you. 1 can of black beans, 5 green onions, 1/4 cup of chopped fresh cilantro, and then some salt and pepper to taste. That is a Zesty quinoa salad. I will make it as is the recipe, but I'll give you some pointers on things that might make it not as, well, this one's not spicy. So sometimes people feel cilantro has a little bit of a kick, which I don't think it does. I think it's a really mild recipe that you'll probably enjoy. So the other one is the taco meat as we say. We again will use the quinoa, we'll use some vegetable or chicken broth. We will use cumin, chili powder, garlic powder, salt, pepper, and olive oil or avocado oil. Use what you have or what you like. I use olive oil because that's what our family likes. So we're going to start off by cooking the quinoa in the Instapot. The Instapot, excuse me, mine isn't an Instapot, it's a pressure cooker, but your Instapot should have similar instructions enough. And if you don't understand or have questions, either call me and we'll look it up together, or we can work out the instructions for you. And up until recently, I've been cooking my quinoa on the stovetop, but I just found recently a recipe that shows me how to cook it in the Instapot, and I love it because I can cook my quinoa, prep all my ingredients. Once the quinoa is done, I put all my ingredients in and the meal's over. So in a pretty short amount of time, I can have something for my kids to eat because they're always starving. So that's kind of a nice advantage. We talked a little bit about quinoa, Mom. I'm just going to go over this so that you have this information. This is tricolored quinoa. The tricolored quinoa has a combination of white, red, and black quinoa. I buy this quinoa at Winco in the bulk food section. This container I purchased at the Dollar Tree, which is a super fantastic store. I know you love it. And so they have ones that were smaller sized, but it's just a container with a lid that twists on. I wouldn't say that it's airtight per se, but in this situation it can probably store for a couple years. Quinoa is really nice like that, in that it will store. If you open it and then put it in the freezer, it'll store even longer, but this will, for me, I don't store it in here. We use it regularly, and I'm buying quinoa regularly at the store. So, let's see. So we'll go ahead and get starting. Now, the recipe that I read recommended that we toast the quinoa before we cook it, which you don't have to, and many times I won't. Just if I'm in a hurry, you can put the quinoa in there, or if I forget, which is more realistic, you just put the quinoa in there and just add the broth and just get right to it, or you can give it the toasting. We're going to go ahead and toast it this time just because I do feel like it gives it a nice, a little bit more of a firmer texture, a little bit more of a better flavor, but it's marginal and you may probably not even be able to tell much of a difference. So we're going to go ahead and start with that. Oops, excuse me, Instapot. I'm going to grab my spoon and my measuring spoon. And we are going to go ahead and, on mine it's saute, and then I hit start. I believe yours is just saute on the Instapot brand. We are going to, each recipe calls for 1 cup of quinoa. We're going to go ahead and cook 2 cups of quinoa just because I know that that's something, well, we're combining the recipes, so we'll just do 2 and 1, and then we'll legitimately divide the quinoa in half in the pan, scoop it out into another bowl, and make the zesty salad in a different bowl. So I already hit saute, so it's starting to warm up, and then I'm just going to put 1 cup of quinoa and another cup of quinoa. I love this container because I can just go in there and scoop. It can be poured. It just gives me lots of flexibility as far as that goes. Put the lid on here. While that's warming up, I'll tell you a little bit about quinoa, a little bit that I know. Quinoa is a really fantastic grain. It's actually not a grain. It's considered more of a seed because of the makeup of it and everything, but it's high in fiber, which is really awesome. In a situation for, our family, Dan, if you have anybody that's gluten-free, it's also, this is a gluten-free food, we'll call it. It is high in protein, and it has all of the 9 of the amino acids, which which is what makes it a complete protein. So, which is really fantastic. So it's a great thing. Because it does have fiber, you probably will want to mix it with something and not maybe eat it just as rice substitute alone, like a lot of people will, but it has that option for you. Do know that it does have carbs. It has a good amount of carbs, so if you're trying to do like a carb-free or a low carb, it's not necessarily going to be the right match for you. Per se, but you could do it with moderation in combination with other things that would make that a balanced meal and still give you some of the good fiber and other nutrients that is in the quinoa. So toasting will take a minute as it heats up and starts toasting. One thing I notice with, because how do you know if it's done toasting? One way that you can kind of tell is if you listen, you'll be able to kind of hear it like pop. It's not really like a or anything. It's more like a little and you'll hear it. And once I get just a few of them going, then that's when I'll add the water to it. Well, that's going. I'm going to get my chicken broth because I personally like to cook my quinoa in chicken broth versus just water. I find for my kids, they prefer it right now. They prefer it with some chicken stock or vegetable stock or beef stock, something that adds a little bit more flavor to it. And so that's what I'll do. And for me, I never have the containers or the cans. I sometimes do if they're on sale, but it's more cost effective for me to get like the granules or like the better than bouillon option. This particular one I like. I found it at Walmart. It is called Herb Ox, H-E-R-B, Ox. And it's just chicken granules. It's gluten-free, and I like that to have on hand because my brother, Dan, he comes, oh, and you can actually hear it starting to pop now. So I'm going to give it, actually kind of smells a little bit like popcorn. But anyway, this one is gluten-free. They also have individual packets that are sodium-free, which is really helpful and something that we try to avoid a lot of in our diet. So it's kind of helpful to know there's an option there. Okay, I'm getting a decent amount of these popping. So what I'm going to do now, for me, I have found it works best if I now turn off the heat and then I add my 2 cups. So we're putting 2 cups of water. It was 2 cups of quinoa, now 2 cups of water. It's steaming and boiling up, but I found that if I left the heat on, and then tried to put my lid on. The pressure was just too high, instantly hot, and it wouldn't let me put my lid on. So a little tidbit of information if that may be helpful for you. So you're just going to stir that in. And then I forgot my teaspoon, so let me grab that. This particular bouillon is 1 teaspoon per cup of water. So I'm just going to put 2 teaspoons of my chicken bouillon in there. Again, you can make this with just water if you'd like. It's just up to you. I just like the little bit more flavor to it for these 2 recipes. Okay, stir in that bouillon. And now we will put the lid on. Lock it, set it for pressure, and we're going to pressure cook on high for 1 minute and start. That's it, 1 minute. Super awesome, super fantastic. I love it. We'll put the quinoa over here. We'll use that again in a second. The next thing that we're going to go ahead and do is get the taco meat seasonings put together. And I like to do this because then once this is done, I can just pour it in and it's done. And that's as easy as that recipe is. So if we just put them together, I like to use, I got these at the dollar store, 3 of them for $1. So it's a really good deal. I like to put little mixes. My children love to use them for all sorts of eating, but they're nice to have for this type of thing. So I'm going to take one of these and I am going to get my teaspoon, which I'm kind of lazy. I will use the same teaspoon and just wipe it off with a rag in between my seasonings. A lot of people would probably frown on that, but if I have a clean rag and I'm just wiping it off, it gets everything, and then I don't have to have a million little teaspoons for all of these types of things. I use a lot of spices and herbs in my cooking, and so this is what works for me. So we're going to start with our cumin. I'm actually going to grab all of them. So I have my cumin, chili powder, garlic powder, and then I am going to, I forgot my pepper and pepper. So this is stuff you can all just buy at any grocery store, somewhere super easy, and people have readily available. So I will note that the recipe and directions on the recipe is going to tell you to do this a little bit different, to cook the broth and everything, because they're doing it in a pan and they're doing one recipe. And so this recipe would, for the taco meat, would ask for broth and some water because they're planning to simmer it on the pan. If you do it this way, you can actually go within your application or your directions and you can change those so that you remember what they are for you, whatever you like to do. So we're going to do 2 teaspoons, 1 teaspoon here and 1 teaspoon. It does not have to be real exact because it's not a recipe like a cake where you're needing the components to interact with each other. This is all for flavor, for taste, and so you can kind of be, if you like the smell of cumin, maybe add a little bit more if you like that. That beep meant that my Instapot or my pressure cooker is up to pressure, and the minute will start counting down here in just a second. After the cumin, we're going to do chili powder. The recipe calls for 2 teaspoons. I will put 2 teaspoons in because that's what we like. We like kind of that kick and that chili. Mom, you are going to not put 2 teaspoons in. You can half it to 1 teaspoon, and for you, I might even start with just half of a teaspoon so that it has a little bit of that flavor, but not so overwhelming, especially since your palate is so mild. So stick with maybe just half of a teaspoon, and if that's still too much, next time cut it back. Just find what makes sense on that chili powder because it could be really spicy. That's the one that's going to give this kick. Perfect. So now the quinoa is done, and we're going to let it natural release for 12 minutes. My pressure cooker has a countdown. It kind of goes to a keep warm, and I think yours does the same thing. So I just let it go, and right now it'll do that for 12 minutes, 12 hours. And so now it's just going to count down for 12 minutes, and I'll be able to see that on that screen. So cool. And my Instapot here beeps every minute, so that'll be super fun. Next up, so now we've already done our cumin, we've done our chili powder. Now we're going to do half a teaspoon of garlic powder. Again, because I'm lazy, I'm just kind of putting this about half because it doesn't truly matter if it's exact on that. That kind of works for us. Excuse me, that was garlic powder. If I said chili powder, that's garlic powder. I am not putting salt just because I'm trying to reduce the sodium. So I will put half a teaspoon of pepper. If you wanted salt in there, you would also put half a teaspoon of salt right there into that container. So that is all the seasonings that we're going to need for our quinoa taco meat recipe. I will then now just take my teaspoon and just mix that up into this little dish. Mix that up, and now we will set that aside, and we'll use that in a minute, or in approximately 10 minutes when we add all the ingredients there. So now while we wait the extra time here, let's go to our zesty quinoa salad recipe. In this recipe, we are going to start by making a dressing per se. And with our dressing, it's a little bit more than I like to put in one of these bowls. So let me grab another bowl. Kids help do dishes and put them where they don't go. So we are going to take this bowl, and I'm going to grab a fork and just use that to whisk. It says to whisk the olive oil, lime juice, and cumin together. So, and it will take a 1/4 cup of olive oil. And I can't find my 1/4 cup because my kids helped me do the dishes. So I will go ahead and use a 1/2 cup and just fill it up halfway. That's how high tech we are. If you really felt like it was, after you make this recipe, you feel like that's just too much olive oil or it's too greasy, feel free to cut that back and find the flavor, that balance that you really like and appreciate. All right, put this over here, and we will get our lime juice. So the recipe calls specifically for limes and for those limes to be juiced. I will never successfully have limes in my house with my children. They will cut them up promptly and make limeade. And so what I do is, and they actually will do that with my lime juice as well, until I finally had to get on them and say, this needs to be used for cooking. So this is very scientific. It's just kind of a little pour. 1, 2. Feel like you need a little bit more? Do more. A good recommendation you could do is actually get your teaspoon and pour it out and get kind of the balance that you really, really like. I would say I did approximately 2 teaspoons in there, so if that's helpful. All right, done with our lime juice. We'll put that back away. Left my cumin over here because we're going to add cumin to this recipe as well. So this one calls for 2 teaspoons of quinoa. And we're putting this again right back into that dressing that has the olive oil and the lime juice. Now we are done with the quinoa for now. My fork, and now we're just going to whisk that. Just kind of do kind of this motion to whisk it. Stir it up, mix it, and we'll set that aside for when we're ready for that. Next thing we're going to do is cut up all the fresh ingredients for the rest of the salad. We're going to start with our green onions. We're going to call for, it calls for 5 green onions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks like I pulled 6 out. Just what I do is I line them all up where the roots are kind of at the end there. And then I don't use the roots. So I just chop those roots off, move them off to the side, and then just cut those into little rounds. Again, how we've talked, if you don't like green onions, You don't have to put these in. If you don't want them such a strong onion flavor, you can just do half of them. This is really a recipe that can be adapted to your tastes and styles. The very first time I made this recipe, I don't believe I had green onions at all, and it was still really good, and we thought it was good enough that we said, yeah, let's make this again. Let's add the green onions and see what we think. And I really liked the addition of the green onions, and so we continue to add them in. They're a little bit more mild than like the bulb onion, or like a sweet onion or a yellow onion. But I like that it adds just kind of a fresh element and a mild onion flavor. You might find that different. You might find that it has a really strong onion flavor just because your palate's a little bit different. So play around with it. See what you like. All right. Okay. Instapot's at 6 minutes now. There's our green onions. Next thing we're going to cut up is our tomatoes. And check these out. Look at these tomatoes. These are just so beautiful. They are organic heirloom grape tomatoes that I found at the store. They were on sale, and I thought they looked beautiful. So typically I will buy just the normal red ones because, well, just because. But I thought these looked beautiful, and they were the same price, and so I went with them. I do not personally love the flavors of cherry tomatoes or grape tomatoes. My kids do, and Adam loves them, but I don't. And so I will just put a handful of them. The recipe asks for 1.5 cups. I won't be putting that much in. I'll just put a handful in. All right. So we're at 7 minutes now with the Instapot. And remember, it has a natural release of 12 minutes. So we are almost done. Those are so colorful. I love them. Love it. Let's do a couple more in there. You just cut them up into bite-sized pieces. The recipe itself asks for them halved cherry tomatoes. I don't want a half of a cherry tomato in my bite, so I will just go ahead and cut them into quarters. All right, this looks like it's good for me. If I were to guess, I'd say about a cup maybe. Okay, so now we have our green onions, our tomatoes, our last two things, we're going to do our cilantro and then our black beans. So let's go ahead. My trick with cilantro is fantastic. Just get your cup and a pair of scissors. You can get these probably at the dollar store, but a pair of kitchen scissors. They're nice to have a pair of scissors that are not going to be used for anything else. Like, don't take them into your office and cut paper, just keep them in the kitchen. What you do is you take your cilantro, I grab it right kind of where looks like the leaves and the stem meet up, twist it off, twist it and rip, and then I'm going to take this and shove it in my cup. Lots of times I have my kids helping me cook, and so this is a great way for them to be able to cut the herbs in a way that's not going to take off one of their fingers. So I like that. You just cut it right in the cup and use the scissors to kind of stir around, get the pieces on the bottom up, and just cut until you looks like they're the size that you would want. There's no rule here on how fine of a cut you do it. So just whatever looks good. stirring that up. Yeah, we're at 10 minutes there, so we're really gonna go just do our beans, and then we're gonna be set. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with my cut. Again, this is just up to you and how you like to have it cut. But then we're good. So the last thing we're gonna do is our beans. You probably won't have canned beans, and that's okay. I do. So the thing with the canned beans is this is actually going to be 2 pints, and a pint is approximately the same size as a can. So I'll go ahead and take a pint and just pull these in there, just so it looks more similar with what you have. And then these black beans per the recipe are going to be drained and rinsed. So the way, some people will, most people probably, will get out a colander and rinse them that way. I'm pretty lazy of a chef and a cook, and I'm always in a hurry with people trying to tell me they're starving. So I will rinse them in the can, and I'll show you how I do that. Let's just use half of these. The other nice thing is I'll use this, and then I'll take these beans. Usually if I make this recipe, I'll do the beans and the taco meat. If I do it at the same time, I'll then take this and use it for my burritos or my taco salad or whatever, so it won't be wasted. Okay, so we're gonna take our beans, and then if this was a can, you just take the lid, take your lid off. You're going to pull the lid to the side and just kind of pour the liquid out. Then under the sink, grab the water, put the lid back on, slosh it around, pour it out, and do that a couple times. I'm gonna go do that right here. All right, and now we should be all set with that, and we are at time with our Instapot. So now it's just time to assemble. So our Instapot's ready. What we're going to do now with our Instapot is we are going to release the pressure. Most of it is going to be out. Sometimes you'll get some pressure. Looks like I've got a little bit. I'm just gonna let the last little bit release. And I'm going to hit stop so I don't have to hear that beeping anymore. Twist our lid off. Set that over here. And now just stir up that quinoa. It smells wonderful. You can eat this as is. This is now something you could use as a rice substitute, and some people will. We're just going to use it for these recipes. So let me go ahead and divide this up. I'm going to take my spoon and just make a line right down the center. This is how, it does not have to be exactly half, but since we put the 2 cups in and we only need 1 cup for the recipe, this is a great way to do it. Move this that way. So now I'm going to take my quinoa into this bowl. And we're going to use this bowl here to do the zesty quinoa salad. All right, so because we've prepped everything, this is now just really, really easy assembly time. So what we'll do here is our dressing that we did. Again, this is the olive oil and the lime juice and the quinoa. Since I left my fork in there, I'm just gonna give it another real quick mix. and then just pour that over the top. Whoa, excuse me. And then stir that in. We're going to add our green onions and our tomatoes. I like these flexible cutting boards because then I can just do that. Fold it in half and just scoop it off. And just stir that up. Oop, can't forget our cilantro. I love cilantro. Thankfully, most of my kids also love cilantro. All right, and then we're stir that up, and that zesty quinoa salad is now complete. So from here, this is a great salad, by the way, that can be eaten both cold or warm. So this is something that you could eat now, just put it in a bowl and eat it up. It's absolutely delicious. The other option is you can chill it and then have it cold. My kids often, many times, will take this as lunch. I will make up a bunch of it, sometimes even the day or the night before school days, and then I will just put it in containers. I usually will not send them with a glass container. I will send them with a plastic container, but we will go ahead and just scoop it in, and I don't know that I would fill up. This is a 2-cup container. You can buy these at Walmart. I believe you have some. I believe you have quite a few of them, and they can freeze too. And then just put a little bit that you like, that whatever the serving is makes sense for you, and then just put your lid on, and then you can put those in the freezer. And then that they would, you'd be able to freeze them. Then you can take it out the night before. If you know that you're going to have this as a meal the next day, you could put it, let it de-thaw in the fridge, or you can pull it out. Probably microwave it for, I don't know how long. I have not frozen it and microwaved it, but probably start off with a minute, stir it up, and see how that goes. Well, there you go. So that is that one. Super wonderful, super easy. Portion those out. This, I think yesterday I did it. It made 5 or 6 of these 2-cup containers with about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch. What is that? About 3/4 of an inch headspace, which is good for freezing. So there you go. So there's your zesty quinoa salad. I'm going to move it just a little bit here over here so we have everything else. This is the easiest, best part now for the taco meat. We're going to finish this one up in about 2 seconds flat. So I don't know if you can see it, probably not, but legitimately that's just half of I went right down the center there and halved it out. So all we're doing here is we are adding 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and 90% of the time I do not measure, but for you, I will, just so that you have that. I'm going to switch back over to my other recipe here. Oh, it's 1 tablespoon, excuse me. See, good thing I checked. 1 tablespoon of olive oil. You just pour that in. What that is going to do is kind of give it a really, it's good to have some healthy oils in there as well, but it's going to give something for these vegetables all to stick to. Excuse me, not vegetables. My goodness, we're not putting vegetables in this. That was the last one. These are spices. So then we're taking our spices from before. Remember, this has our ground cumin, our chili powder, our garlic powder, possibly salt and pepper if you've put that in there. And that's what we're going to do. We'll take this, and we're just going to pour that right on top of that quinoa and stir it up. And that is as easy as that is. So this is, for me, takes just about as long, or if not as long, as doing any ground beef or ground turkey, which we don't do ground beef or turkey for our Mexican meals hardly ever anymore. We either do ground turkey if we're going to do a meat, or we will do this quinoa. Super fantastic. I will tell you that the recipe originally, this recipe that I found asked you to then take this and lay it on a cookie sheet, flat out on a cookie sheet, and bake it in the oven. And I did that the first time, but I personally didn't find any value in the extra length of time that it took. And some of the outside pieces were crunchy, which could add a little bit of different texture to it if that's something that you really want. But I find this is very similar texture to like a ground beef or a ground turkey, which is what we would use anyway. So I don't use that additional step, but it's definitely there as an option, and could be something that you like, but try it. Who knows? Maybe you prefer it that way. All right. So that's it. That's this one. And like I was telling you, what I do with this is I will take a handful of chopped lettuce, put it down, take some of this, sprinkle it on top, take some extra, oh, my black beans. I have to put those in the Zesty quinoa salad. I'll take some black beans and some cheese and some fresh tomatoes and some Greek yogurt. And I'll do the unflavored, obviously, and put that on top, and it just creates a really nice taco salad. Really good flavoring on that. Since I messed up and forgot to put our black beans, I am going to bring this back over. You won't probably forget, but you just pour those black beans in there too. Mix it up. Add some good, more fiber, more protein. Different texture. If you don't have black beans, leave them out. It's really good without. The first time we made it, we did not have cilantro or green onions, and it was good enough that we decided to make it again. I will say that it is better to have them. So anyway, so there we go. That's your taco meat, your quinoa taco meat, and your Zesty quinoa salad. Hopefully those you will get to enjoy and have fun with and enjoy eating quinoa. So thanks, Mama. Love you. See you again soon. Bye.